Good morning, or whatever time it is for you while you're watching this worship service. I would just like to say welcome. During this time of social isolation, when we're kind of in exile from one another, we're not able to reach out and shake one another's hands, but we can still engage in a practice of welcoming. Oftentimes you'll notice that Unitarian Universalist congregations, we say we are welcoming congregations, and that's a reminder to us to be welcoming of gays, lesbians, bisexual, transgender people in our communities. But it's also a reminder that we're always about the business of stretching our hearts and our minds wider and wider so that more people, more insights, more inspiration, more joy, more hope, more love can be present with us. So I say welcome. Welcome to you. Welcome to all of you.
Our gathering hymn this morning is Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. It's number 34 if you have a hymnal.
We need one another. Together, we keep love and faith, support and caring, understanding and acceptance thriving at UUCS and in the wider world. We need to be strong in our covenant with one another. Please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is our doctrine. Compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration, build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes, and serve the needs of our world. At UUCS, we are not bound together by creed or doctrine. We don't gather to please one God or follow one spiritual path. We are together in a mutual knowledge that love and kindness can change lives, and that together we can make a difference in the world. Each week, we light our chalice to symbolize the light that each of us brings to our community, our faith, and our world. At UUCS, we light our chalice for all of you with whom we share this spiritual path, for our partner church in Šibenfalva, Transylvania, Romania, and for all children and youth. May our many flames light the darkness and warm our hearts. I'm curious to know what you believe about what is the best food. Think about that for a moment. Now, I believe that for many of you, perhaps even most of you, that the food you believe is best today will not be what you believe is best for the rest of your life. I believe it's very possible for that best food to get knocked down off its throne and replaced by a different food, a new best food. We as Unitarian Universalists really value the freedom each of us has to believe about not just things like what we think is the best food, but about bigger things like, why are we here? What is the meaning of our lives? What is most important and valuable to me? How can I be most true to the purpose I see for my being alive in the world? We affirm the freedom to believe what we choose about these things, but we also have the responsibility to work out those beliefs with thought and care and what is in our hearts and what our mind tells us. Thank goodness we don't have to do this all by ourselves. No, we're fortunate to have one another to help us try out our beliefs. It's like we can offer one another tastes of ideas we feel to be true. It's like together each of us brings our best food to share at a potluck. Each of us brings our treasured beliefs to share with one another in our congregation. We can put several on our plate. First, the ones we're confident that we like, and then maybe go back for seconds, for a chance to try something that our friends recommend as really yummy. And sometimes those new yummy tastes will become favorites. So I encourage you to share with each other what you believe is your best food. And perhaps even more fun, what you believe is the worst.
Why don't we pause for a moment, just take a deep breath. Feel the slower rhythms of life, the deeper rhythms, the truer rhythms of life. And I invite you now to think about compassion, compassion, compassion. You can't be compassionate to other people, really, not truly, until you learn to be compassionate towards yourself. And that's not easy to do. Learning to be compassionate towards ourselves is a monumental, lifelong journey, I think, for many of us. But let's remember to hold ourselves in compassion, to think of ourselves and the struggles and the trials and the challenges we face. Let us think of ourselves with compassion. Let us have compassion for ourselves. When you have learned compassion for yourself, compassion for others will then be automatic. So I invite you now to feel compassion for yourself. In all likelihood, you've got some real struggles and challenges, anxieties and fears, and pains and sorrows. Life isn't easy for you. Have compassion for yourself. And having compassion for yourself, true compassion, will lead you to have compassion with those around you in your life. On this special day of your life, and every day is special on this day of your life, I invite you to consider how you can be compassionate today. Maybe you'll be compassionate to your pet, an animal, or a child, or a family member. Or maybe you'll be compassionate when you write a letter or a note to someone. There are endless opportunities for being compassionate. And that transforms us, it transforms our world. So think of who you're going to direct your compassionate thoughts to beyond yourself today. Compassion is our way. And gratitude. I don't know how many of you remember Joyce Bynum. She was a member here. She was one of the great souls whose light and love and courage have brought us life in this community. Kathy died a few years ago, but I remember talking to her once. We were at a coffee shop and she was telling me about donating her piano. She was donating her baby grand piano to us for an auction. And I knew that Joyce loved classical music a great deal. And I asked her how she could give up her piano. And she told me, she said, well, my hearing's not so good anymore. And I can't listen to music anymore. And I was starting to feel really, really sorry for her about this great loss. And she smiled and says, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. There are so many other things that I can now enjoy in life. And I'm grateful for those. And I love classical music, you know. That really caught me. That just made me aware that gratitude is about being grateful for what you have, what you actually have, and not mourning for the things that you don't have. I love the Stoics, the ancient Stoic philosophers, and Epictetus once said, he is a wise person who does not grieve for the things which you have not, but rejoices for those things which you have. And Joyce Bynum serves to me as a great example of what gratitude is all about, the kind of gratitude that brings happiness. So I invite you now to simply be aware of everything around you and recognize the things that bring you joy, that bring you pleasure, even bring you challenge. Those things without which your life would be much poorer. There's an endless number of things to be grateful for. Acknowledging our gratitude is a path to happiness. And I invite you now to take just a moment to be aware of the great gift of life, the beauty of it, all the love and light and challenge and sorrow too. It's an amazing thing to be alive. And we are grateful. We are deeply grateful. Amen.
My Lord, what a morning! My Lord, what a morning! Oh, my Lord, what a morning! When the stars begin to fall, you'll hear the trumpets sound, raising the nations underground. Looking to my God's right hand, when the stars begin to fall. My Lord, what a morning! My Lord, what a morning! Oh, my Lord, what a morning! When the stars begin to fall, you'll hear the people's voices reaching the ears of everyone. Look into their eyes when the stars begin to fall. My Lord, what a morning! My Lord, what a morning! Oh, my Lord, what a morning! When the stars begin to fall, you'll hear the music playing, raising the spirit of love. Look into your heart when the stars begin to fall.
May I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector of those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, a servant to all in need. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then, may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world.
Covenant. Now there's a big word. Growing up in the Southern Baptist Church, I heard it a lot, but it just never flew within the field of my gravitational field of my interest. I just didn't care much about it. I didn't think much about it. But then when I was in theology school, I started having to think about it, which has actually proven to be a good thing, because there are certain key themes in life that are worthy of sustained reflection across the span of years. So here's a thumbnail sketch of the evolution of what was originally known of as the Mosaic covenant. There are other types of covenants in the Bible, but this is the one that really directly concerns all of us, actually. It was about 3,000 or so years ago in the Middle East. Think of the time when the ancient Hebrews were in Egypt. They were slaves under the rule of Pharaoh. This was a violent era where armies often clashed in brutal conflict and no mercy was shown to the losers. And in this polytheistic era, it was even the tribal gods joined the people in the conflicts. The early Hebrews didn't consider their tribal god Yahweh to be the only God in the heavens, but he was their God. And in their vulnerable situation, they needed all the protection they could get. So they struck up a bargain. They would pledge their devotion to Yahweh, and in exchange, Yahweh would give them protection. They would pledge their devotion to Yahweh, and in exchange, Yahweh would offer them protection. This agreement was modeled on ancient Middle Eastern contracts between rulers and their subjects. The word Godfather kind of springs to mind when you think about this covenant. The Hebrew God Yahweh actually ordained some brutal conquest, as is recorded in a number of the ancient texts. So imagine the goriest movie you've ever seen, and that's probably a pale version of the ancient action you'll find in the scripture. There was a lot of cruel, ugly stuff. A lot of it was done in the name of God too, or the gods. And in fact, committing violence was seen as fulfillment of the covenant, which points to the fact that covenants, like religion in general, don't always lead us to good places or get good results. But just to further confuse you, covenants have led to some sublime results. Consider how the Mosaic covenant, named after Moses, which included the 10 Commandments, consider how this covenant has shaped our society. You might not even be aware of it. I don't think most people would be. Over time, the Hebrew tribal God evolved. He started off being this tribal, patriarchal God of vengeance, but over time, as people grew spiritually, a universal God of love was envisioned, a God who called upon society to show love and compassion, especially for those who are most vulnerable, the poor, the widows, the foreign workers. Another interesting and very unique development among the Hebrews was the evolution of an independent class of religious authority, the Hebrew prophets. You'll often hear me speak about the Hebrew prophets. These were the ones who had enough social standing in that ancient time, very unique arrangement. They had enough social standing to be able to criticize the high and the mighty for their transgressions, and their transgressions were many. A clear example of this is found in a section of the Bible that's known of as the throne succession narrative. It's in 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, those books. And the throne succession narrative commands respect from Bible scholars and many others because it has such a high literary quality and there's so much psychological insight contained in these passages. So here's a story from that throne succession narrative. One day, King David, he already had a number of concubines. Nobody knows exactly how many. They've tried to count them up by looking in the Bible, but they can't even figure it out. But King David, he already had a number of concubines, but he spied Bathsheba. She was sunbathing on the roof of her house. Bathsheba, she was the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Uriah the Hittite, he fought in King David's army. And so, unfortunately, King David's lust for Bathsheba led him to do something really, really terrible. He arranged for Uriah, his own soldier, to be killed in battle, whereupon Bathsheba was then available for the taking. And so King David took her. And you thought our president was bad. Sometime later, the king received a visit. He received a visit from the prophet Nathan. And Nathan had a concern to share. He was upset about something. And Nathan, the prophet Nathan, told King David, he said, there's this rich man in the kingdom, and he hosted this great feast for all his friends. But instead of slaughtering an animal from his vast herd, he has all these animals, he took and slaughtered this poor man's sheep, his only sheep, his neighbor. He took and slaughtered his sheep. What should be done about this injustice? Asked Nathan. Upon hearing this outrageous story, King David, he was filled with wrath and indignation, and he said, this man should die. And who is he? And Nathan replied, you are. You are the man. You are the man. It went downhill for David after this. He had violated the covenant. His life and his reign subsequently ended on a very sorrowful and tragic note. My fellow friend, my dear friend, Reverend Craig Morrow, who's going to be speaking here next Sunday, he carved something on white oak. It's in Hebrew, and it says, you are the man. And I keep it in my office to remind myself that before I cast aspersion on others, I should look within. Well, it didn't just go downhill for King David. Things also went downhill for the two great kingdoms of Judea and Israel. They got steamrolled by the vastly more powerful Assyrians and the Babylonians. Now, the scientists rightly remind us, this is something that you can't say too often, correlation does not prove causation. Correlation does not prove causation. Yet the Hebrew prophets declared that the destruction of these kingdoms, these Hebrew kingdoms, was none other than the chastening rod of God in action, that their dreadful fate of being conquered and dragged off into exile, this was a direct consequence of their lack of faithfulness, most especially their faithless oppression of the poor and the vulnerable. Regarding the elite of his society, the prophet Amos vented, they trample on the heads of the poor as on the dust of the ground, and they deny justice to the oppressed. And that was true. That was true. All the ancient records indicate this was very true. The ruling elite displayed a shocking lack of concern for the welfare of the common folks, then as now. Yet even if the elite had been truly faithful to the covenant of their faith, which called for them to treat the stranger, the foreigner, the weak, and the oppressed with fairness and compassion, there's no evidence, not a shred of evidence, that the Hebrew elite would thereby have avoided their dreadful fate. In fact, when you apply this kind of theological reasoning that when bad things happen, God is punishing you, then you also have to say a lot of other terrible things. All manner of atrocities are divinely ordained, even the Holocaust. And that's a horrendous and a harmful notion. Bad things happen to people, even to good people, and they can't always be explained away. Nevertheless, you can't fault the ancient prophets for believing such a thing. Everybody in that era in history believed that kind of cause and effect relationship. And it shouldn't obscure the Hebrew prophets' transformative spiritual contributions. When the early Hebrews made a covenant with a tribal God in a polytheistic context who sanctioned violence, that's how they began. But centuries later, the prophets envisioned their covenant being with a God of all people, whose desire was that everyone, especially those on the margins, were treated well, and that the failure to do so was a grievous breach of the sacred covenant that called for everyone to see the image of the divine in all other people. All the major religious traditions of humankind, each in their own way, affirm this truth, which lies at the foundation of a healthy society. Everyone is deserving of respect. Everyone is deserving of being treated fairly. Well, in this regard, our American society has some long-standing, pre-existing healthcare conditions. To our nation's credit, democratic ideals have been enshrined, if not generally observed. Yet we began our nation's history with some tragic flaws, most especially in regards to the cruel and dehumanizing institution of slavery, and also the slaughter and displacement of Native Americans. Today, you don't have to look far to see the evidence of worsening economic inequality, homelessness, lack of health care, deplorable treatment of immigrants and the undocumented. All these things would have the Hebrew prophets crying for justice in our land and warning of dire consequences if we didn't achieve it. So what has this got to do with us, Unitarian Universalists? Well, it's got everything to do with us. In our core document, our purposes and principles, we begin with a statement. It says that we covenant to affirm and promote, note that word covenant, we covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You may note that we often refer to ourselves as a covenantal religious tradition, a covenantal religious tradition as opposed to being a creedal one. There's no creed that we share that we demand that you assent to. We're covenantal. This means that what binds us together is not a common belief system. When you join our congregations, we don't ask you what you believe. We ask you, are you willing to uphold the life-affirming values as expressed in our purposes and principles? Our covenant, think about it, it's an echo. It's an echo of an ancient covenant. The ancient covenant that the Hebrew prophets who called for justice and compassion first articulated so many centuries ago. Indeed, our covenant is an echo of the words of saints and sages and prophets from many traditions who call for us to recognize the interdependent nature of our lives and what that means for us. As Martin Luther King Jr. put it, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Yet here's a pitfall. Here's a pitfall. I've stumbled into it more than a few times, even as I have been quick to take others to task for their betrayal of the common good. There's a great temptation to see life through the lenses of self-righteousness and imagine that all that is wrong in the world, all that's wrong in the world lies outside of you. A person can get stuck in this place of smoldering indignation, and it's not good for your spiritual health. You just get pickled in your own acidic brine. A healthy spiritual life calls for a liberal dose of humility. Those who forget true humility, who think they or their particular ideology or party or cause have all the answers, those who lose a realistic sense of their own frailties and fallibilities and their place in the greater scheme of things, they lose their way. We lose our way. And so as I think about covenant, I'm led eventually back to myself. I can remind others to live justly, but I don't have control over others. Yet I can exercise some measure of control over myself. And I realize that I am called to consider again and again what it means to live in life-affirming, covenantal ways with members of our community, our congregational community, and beyond. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy. Sometimes it means that I have to acknowledge when I am wrong or when I haven't been fair or fully informed. I have to do that. Then too, it's very hard to resist to the temptation to project all that is bad onto others and avoid responsibility when things go awry. But when you can do this, when you can be fair to people, when you can acknowledge your fault and your flaws, and when you ask people to treat you the same, you build trust. You build trust. You build trust by being trustworthy and fair and courageously honest and compassionate. And I don't always pass those tests. So there's always more work to do, lots more work. But I'm grateful for this learning because it frees me from the prison of self-centeredness, and it leads me to the wider world of our interbeing and our interdependency. This work is so important that many congregations, including our own, have created covenants of right relations. And these covenants of right relations, we have one, it's on our website. They serve as a guide and a reminder to help create a community wherein people have a deep sense of trust in one another. Our committee on the ministry will soon be inviting us all to review, possibly revise, and renew our covenant. Stay tuned for that. When you create a strong foundation of mutual trust in community, when you do that, and we've done it so much here, so much is possible. And this for me calls to mind a state of mind that the Buddhists call mudita, M-U-D-I-T-A, mudita. That's a good word. That's an excellent word to add to your vocabulary. Mudita is the joy you feel, like imagine seeing a bunch of little kids out there playing around and just enjoying watching them have a good time, just feeling joy because they're feeling joy. That's mudita. That's mudita, taking joy in the joy of other people. And during those hard times, when there's nothing that you can do except face the pain of life, nothing brings more consolation than to experience the embrace of community, to love and be loved, to give joy and receive joy. This is what brings the deepest fulfillment in our lives. When I was a child in the Southern Baptist Church, you know what brought me the greatest joy during the Sunday service? You know what brought me the greatest joy during the Sunday service was when the minister finished his sermon. So let me just end my sermon with the words of the great 9th century Buddhist sage Shantideva, who noted how wonderful it will be when all beings experience each other as limbs on the one body of life. Yes, indeed. Covenant, covenant. Let that word sink into your consciousness. What does it mean for you? Think about all the relationships in your life, the ones that are in good shape and perhaps some of the ones that aren't in such good shape. Think of all your connections with other people, with your community, with your society, with the world. Think of your relationships. During this time, this meditative pause, look at this part of your life, the relational part, the covenantal part. Spend a moment in silence, breathing deeply, feeling deeply, being aware of all the vital connections that you have, all the connections that you were called to make in this world as you reach out creatively to bring more light and more love and more joy into all our lives. Amen.
At UUCS, we know that your financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. They are vital in sustaining the life and mission of this congregation, our staff, our partner organizations, and our beautiful church building. We are proud to support the Marion Pope Food Share with our Share the Plate program. Pledges and donations may be made by logging onto our website, uusalem.org, or through the mail. The gifts of our members and friends are gratefully received. Before I extinguish our chalice, I will light from it the social justice lantern. This lantern symbolizes the light that this congregation carries into the world through the many works of our friends and members. Extinguishing our chalice does not extinguish the light and warmth of the covenant we share. You all carry that light within you, and I hope you will share it generously with everyone you interact with in the coming week. May it be so.
I'm Christine Ertl, Chair of the Board of our Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Salem. Once again, I'm here to give you our Stewardship Campaign update. I have come to you in the past few Sundays to share with you the progress of our campaign and the current needs. And I'm very happy to report that we've had some positive response to this ask. Our generous congregants are stepping in to maintain our services and shared ministry. Now, I want to explain to you a little bit about this shared ministry that you may not know or may not have thought through. Our shared ministry is conducted through our teams. You might not think the facilities team, which oversees expenses for maintaining our building, our landscaping, our art, is a ministry. But think again, how can we provide a beautiful, welcoming home without the care of our facilities team? You might think it's easier to see our shared ministry in our other teams, like the Lifespan Religious Education team that provides curriculum and supplies for our education component. Or you might think of our social justice team that uses funds for our family promise work. All of these ministries are funded through members and donors, people you know and care about who are motivated to give to keep our ministry thriving. So I've been asking you to contribute by increasing your pledge during the hard times of this pandemic. I know you might not have considered this as a way to support each other during this devastating time, and I know that many of our congregants are not in the financial position to do so at this time. But I also know that those of you who are able to add more to your pledge will be grateful for the opportunity to be of service to others, offsetting the need to ask our most vulnerable congregants to do so. So I'm asking those who can to increase your pledge by at least $10 a month. This increase will enable us to meet the $20,000 goal, which will keep our staff, shared ministry, and programs running. If you haven't signed an estimate of giving form, and thanks to all who have, I urge you to do so. If you've already submitted this form, you can add to it to increase your pledge. It's easy to do. Go online to uusalem.org, click on Contribute at the top of the web page, and scroll down to the pledge link, or simply call the office. Our congregation is filled with thoughtful, caring people. Let's continue to demonstrate this through our increased pledges of $10 a month to carry on the good work of our shared ministry.
Our closing hymn is Our World is One World. In the hymnal, it's number 134.
So we can't join hands today to say our closing words. We can't place our hands on one another's shoulders either. But we can hold one another in each other's hearts as we say our closing words. Would you please join me as we say those closing words? May faith in the Spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred in one another be ours now and in all the days to come.